what do you think of Michael Heiser, and more specifically, in Genesis 1:26, where he seems to think that the plural refers to the divine council and not the Trinity, or at least not limited to the Trinity? So the question has to do with Michael Heiser's view of Genesis 1:26. All right, now, I do want to say at the outset that, I mean, just with respect to Heiser in general, okay, I am going to disagree with Heiser here, but I don't want anybody to hear that as sort of a wholesale dismissal of other things that Heiser teaches. Okay, I think he has some genuine insights on certain things. However, I don't think he's right about this particular text. Okay, I'll just put it that way. With respect to Genesis 1:26, if you've heard me argue for the Trinity, at least in certain contexts, you've heard me bring up Genesis 1:26, right? That's the classic plurality text already found in Genesis 1, where God said, preparatory to the creation of man, let us make man in our image according to our likeness. In the English, you have three plural pronouns there. Let us make man in our image according to our likeness. Heiser does not agree with the classical Christian interpretation of this text. Now, I do want to be clear here and fair. This does not mean that Heiser doesn't believe in the Trinity. Heiser emphatically believes in the Trinity. He just doesn't believe that this text is one of those texts that belong in the Trinitarian arsenal, right? So he is a Trinitarian, but he doesn't think that this text is a text that supports the doctrine of the Trinity. And Heiser's argument goes like something like this. He claims that the Hebrew grammar is against it, reading it as a reference to the persons of the Trinity, and reading it as a reference to the Trinity would be anachronistic. Here's what Heiser says, and this comes from his book, The Unseen Realm, a very popular book. I'm pretty sure it's like a bestseller or something. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's a bestseller. But he says on page 39 of his book, The Unseen Realm, many Bible readers note the plural pronouns with curiosity. They might suggest that the plurals refer to the Trinity, but technical research in Hebrew grammar and exegesis has shown that the Trinity is not a coherent explanation. So there are two issues here. Hebrew grammar and the Trinity is not a coherent explanation. So I'm going to explain what he means by both of these. With respect to Hebrew grammar, he says that this expression, because remember, I didn't say this and I should have, he says that God is actually referring to his heavenly council, right? Simplistically speaking, Heiser thinks that God is speaking to the angels. More technically, Heiser thinks that God is talking to that group of heavenly beings who are called the sons of God in Job 1-2, Job 38, Psalm 82, other places. So that's Heiser's view. God is talking to them.
God is speaking to the heavenly host. It's as simple as that. It's the plural of exhortation.
One of the problems that Heiser tries to anticipate, while at the same time saying this is not about the Trinity, Heiser has to deal with the fact that God is saying, let us make. And so the ones that God is addressing are here being exhorted to join in the work. This is like a mild, a cohortative is like this mild, it's not a command per se, it's a mild exhortation. It's the sort of thing that you might expect one to say to an equal, right? He's saying, let us make together, let us do this, right? And Heiser realizes that he can't say that the angels made us, so he has to have some way of saying this isn't about the Trinity, but it is about angels, without saying that the angels have created us. So here's what Heiser says with respect to the grammar, okay? He says it's like somebody saying to a group of people, hey, let's get some pizza. And then the person goes out and pays for the pizza and brings it back for everybody to eat, right? In other words, while many people are addressed, let us get a pizza, only one person actually goes and gets the pizza and brings it back.
God, singular God, is speaking to a group. He's including them in the conversation for some reason, but when he actually gets down to doing what he said he was going to do, he's the one who does it.
Okay, so what Heiser is saying here is that God says, let us make man, but it's kind of like one person saying, let's get pizza. Only one person actually does it, but he's addressing others. So God is addressing others, but they're not really to be involved in the work. Here's the problem with that. Part of the problem with that. Heiser is going to say later, I want you to remember this, he's going to say that reading the Trinity into this verse is anachronistic. But I want you to notice something. What Heiser is saying here is anachronistic. He's taking a contemporary way of speaking, how we might speak today, and he's reading it back into the Old Testament. I can show you as a matter of fact that every time that verb is used in the Old Testament, right, the verb let us make, na'aseh, it always has reference to a plurality of personal subjects who are always, always, always involved in whatever is being spoken there. It's never one person saying this and one person doing this to the exclusion of the group that he's addressing. Okay, now I'm going to give you every single occurrence of this word in the Torah. The verb is na'aseh, and it's used, for example, in Exodus 19:8, where it says, all the people answered together and said, all that the Lord has spoken, we will do, na'aseh, okay, or we will make. It's an idiomatic way of saying we will do this, okay? Then Moses brought back the words of the people to the Lord. Now ask yourself the question, are the people saying, and would it have been accepted by God for the people to say, we will do this, all the words that you have spoken through Moses, when all they meant is one guy is going to obey your commands and the rest of us are going to disobey you? No, quite obviously, all of them are saying we are all going to do this, right? It's not one of us is going to go get the pizza, right? And the rest of us are going to make a molten calf. It's saying we are all going to do what you have commanded. It's the same exact verb. The same verb is used in Exodus 24:3, where it says, all the words the Lord has spoken, na'aseh, we will do. The same word used in Exodus 24:7, all that the Lord has spoken, we will do. It's the same word used in Numbers 32:31. As the Lord has said to your servants, we will do. So every single time this word is used, the word that's used in Genesis 1:26, in every other occurrence in the Torah, it's never used according to this idiomatic way of speaking that Heiser makes reference to. It's just not there. So what about that whole issue of anachronism? That's what Heiser means when he says that trying to read this as a reference to the Trinity is not coherent. Okay. In a footnote, Heiser says this: seeing the Trinity in Genesis 1:26 is reading the New Testament back into the Old Testament. Okay. So that's what Heiser says. Heiser says it's anachronistic to read this as a reference to the Trinity. Well, before addressing that directly, let me first of all back up and ask, what is it that the New Testament says that would lead Christians to believe that Genesis 1:26 is a reference to the Trinity? Okay, now remember this, because this is what Heiser is going to say is illicitly being read back into the Old Testament. First of all, the New Testament identifies the Son and the Spirit as divine persons and ascribes to them divine attributes. Right? The Son is called God and Lord in places like John 1:1, Mark 1:2, many other passages. And the Spirit is called God and Lord in passages like Acts 5 and 1 Corinthians 3. Furthermore, Colossians 1:17 says that the Son is before all things, and in him all things consist. So the Son, who's called God and Lord, is also said to be eternal. And in Hebrews 9, we're told that Jesus offered himself up on the cross through the eternal Spirit. So, as divine persons, as God and Lord, Scripture says that the Son and the Spirit are eternal. Okay, divine names and attributes are ascribed to both. And as eternal divine persons, it follows that the Son and the Spirit were present when God said in Genesis 1:26, "Let us make man in our image." Okay? That's the first point that I want to make about the New Testament, which Heiser says is illicitly being read back into the Old Testament. Moreover, the New Testament also ascribes to the Son and the Spirit divine works, such as creative work. It explicitly speaks of the Son being active in the work of creation in John 1:1 through 3, in Colossians 1:15 and following, in 1 Corinthians 8:6, Hebrews 1:2, Hebrews 1:10. All over the New Testament, we're told that Jesus, God's Word, his image, right, his firstborn, is the one who made all things. And the New Testament not only speaks of the Father working by the agency of the Son, but also speaks of the agency of the Spirit, and it speaks of the Spirit doing creative work, right? In John 6, Jesus said, "It is the Spirit who gives life, the flesh profits nothing." So the Spirit is the source of life, according to Jesus. Do you remember what it says in John 1 about Jesus? It says, "In him was life, and the life was the light of men." Right after saying that through him all things were made. Well, here Jesus says the same thing about the Spirit. The Spirit is the one who gives life. That's why in John 3, Jesus said that a person had to be born of the Spirit if he's going to enter the kingdom of heaven. The Spirit gives life. In John 7, Jesus spoke of the Spirit as living water that believers would receive through him. Right? Similarly, in 2 Corinthians 3, the Apostle Paul said, "The letter kills, but the Spirit gives life." Okay? In numerous places, we're told that the Spirit is the one who's going to raise our mortal bodies from the dust and confer on us immortality, incorruption, and glory. Okay? So, start putting this together. And I've got more to say, but the New Testament says Son and Spirit are both God, have divine attributes, are eternal. That's one of the attributes that they have. So as God and Lord, the Son and the Spirit were present at the time those words were spoken. They have the power to create, did create, according to the New Testament. But moreover, we're also told in the New Testament that man, by virtue of the fall, needs to be restored to the divine image in which man was originally made. Now, whose image, according to the New Testament, are we being conformed to, and who is it that's doing the transforming work? All over the New Testament, this is writ large. It is into the image of the Son that we are being conformed, right? In 1 Corinthians 15:49, it says, "We will bear the image of the man from heaven." It's referring to Jesus, right? The second Adam, the one who came from heaven. In 2 Corinthians 3, it says, "We all, with unveiled face, beholding as in a mirror the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into the same image from glory to glory, just as from the Lord, the Spirit." In Colossians 3, it says that we are to put on the new self, who's being renewed to a true knowledge, is being renewed to a true knowledge according to the image of the one who created him. And Ephesians 4 says basically the same thing. Put on the new self, which in the likeness of God has been created in righteousness and holiness and truth. So here's the picture. Son and Spirit are those eternal divine persons who are with the Father and active in creation, and who are the ones who are involved in now restoring us to that divine image into which we were originally made. If the New Testament is the Word of God, then this is the final explanation of what's going on in Genesis 1:26. Right? Now, it'd be one thing if somebody says that Genesis 1:26 would not have been understood yet by people under the Old Covenant. But it's another thing to say that the New Covenant does not properly give us the explanation of that text. Now, I also happen to believe that this was also taught in the Old Testament. And this is where I say that Heiser has a falling out with himself. Right? Remember Heiser's argument. Heiser's argument is this is anachronistic. The Trinity is a New Testament doctrine. And if you see this as something that would have been understood by ancient Jews as a reference to the Trinity, you're engaging in anachronism. But Heiser himself, elsewhere in his book, The Unseen Realm, and in many other works that he's done really good work showing that the Old Testament teaches the existence of a plurality of divine persons. Heiser knows that the Old Testament shows that there's more than one person in the Godhead.
And so there I am in a room full of 40 or 50 senior citizens. They're all Jewish, and I'm going through the Godhead in the Old Testament. And none of them had ever heard of it. I had people in there whose fathers were rabbis and cantors. They had never heard of this.
Heiser knows that Second Temple Jews taught this.
And so they were fascinated because part of the class, I took them through Jewish texts in the intertestamental period as to how this idea was part of Judaism, how it developed, and then, of course, it was a segue, to understanding Christianity.
Heiser knows about all of this. So why does Heiser, who knows better, who knows that this is in the Old Testament, say that this is anachronistic? I don't get it. I really don't get it. But let me just point out to you some of the evidence for that. The Messiah, the Old Testament talks about the Messiah. It refers to him as the Son in Psalm 2:7, Psalm 2:12, Proverbs verse 30. In fact, Proverbs chapter 30 implicates the Son into the divine works ascribed to God, right? It says who's ascended and descended, who's gathered up the wind in the hollow of his fists, who's done all these marvelous things. What is his name and the name of his Son? Tell me if you know, right? So the author of Proverbs 30 refers to God having a son and ascribes to him this incomprehensible existence. If you go read Proverbs 30, you'll see what I'm talking about. That he partakes of this same incomprehensible nature as the Lord does. But the same Messiah is referred to as God in Psalm 45. He's referred to as the mighty God in Isaiah 9:6. He's referred to as Elohim and Jehovah in Isaiah 40, verse 3. He's called Jehovah in Jeremiah 23:6. He's called Ha-Edon, the Lord, in Malachi 3:1. In Micah 5:2, it tells us that he's eternal. His goings forth are from of old, from the days of eternity. Psalm 102 ascribes to him the creation of heaven and earth. Daniel 7 says he's going to receive universal worship, divine worship. Very clearly, the Son is a divine person according to the Old Testament. And I would argue the angel of the Lord is the pre-incarnate Son, that divine person who regularly appears to the patriarchs and prophets, identifies himself as God, and is worshipped as God. Okay. Now, what about the Spirit? Does the Old Testament teach that the Spirit is God? It certainly does. 2 Samuel 23, verses 2 and 3, you have this Hebrew parallelism there, where the Spirit is the one who speaks by David, and the one who speaks by him, David calls the God of Israel. Right? Elsewhere in the Old Testament, the Spirit is said to be omnipresent. Psalm 139, David says, "Where can I flee from your Spirit?" Right? If I ascend into heaven, you're there. If I make my bed in the depths of Sheol, behold, you're there. There's nowhere he can flee from God's presence, his Spirit. In Psalm 104:30, it says, God sends forth his Spirit, and he renews the face of the ground. In Job 33 and Job 34, we're told that God is man's maker. And in the same chapters, it says, the Spirit of God has made me. Right? Job says, the Spirit of God has made me. Now put this together. In Genesis 1, God says in the plural, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Both the Old and New Testaments identify a plurality of divine persons who are God and Lord, who have divine attributes, including the attribute of eternality and the power to create, and are the ones in whose image man was made, or is going to be remade, restored to the divine image. This is an Old and New Testament teaching, and it's anachronistic to see this in Genesis 1. By the way, who is mentioned explicitly in Genesis 1? Is it the sons of God mentioned in Job 1 and 2 or Job 38? Or is it the Spirit who's explicitly mentioned in Genesis 1? In Genesis 1:2, it says, the Spirit of God was brooding over the surface of the deep. That word there shows that the Spirit is the one who's maintaining and sustaining the creation. So he's not only being associated with the newly created world, but he is presented already in verse 2 as the world's sustainer. The same word that's only used one other time in the Torah at the very end, so it forms an inclusio with this. The same word that's used in Deuteronomy 32 for the Father, or just simply God, it says there. It speaks of God in relation to Israel as the one who broods over them and takes care of them. So, for the life of me, I don't see why Heiser is not willing to apply what he knows to be the case to this situation. I don't think his grammatical argument works, and certainly I don't think his argument from anachronism works.